All right. So that's your basics of how you do your registration papers. But then what other paperwork do you need to deal with? If you're providing stud service for another farm, you need to give the person who owns the doe a stud service memo. That states that you agree that this buck that's owned by you bred this doe that is owned by them on this date, and the offspring born on that date, 145 days later or so, is indeed of that breeding. It's very important that you hold on to that piece of paper and that they hold on to that piece of paper. Because if you don't have it, then you can't register the offspring of that birth, or you're going to have to go back and rewrite it, which can be a pain in the butt. I have had people falsify my herd name and try to use my herd name on unauthorized breedings. That's why it's important that you not sign documents ahead of time so that the signatures can be matched up. Okay. When you sell an animal, you either sell it already registered, in which case you'll do a bill of sale and transfer at the bottom of the registration paper for ADGA, or you will get a separate piece of paper that is the bill of sale. That is your formal record that they then will send to the registry to say, yes, this animal switches ownership from Hames and Axel Farm or your farm to the buyer's farm. All right? It can be a real problem when those people don't register that animal and then they subsequently sell it. So encourage people, if they're buying registered stock, they need to finish doing that transfer. Because if that animal then winds up at another home down the way, they have no way of tracking it. Now, it used to be the American Goat Society wrote all of the names that ever owned a goat on the back of the registration paper. And a few years ago, they did away with that. So now if you want to get a transfer record, you'll have to pay for it. With ADGA, I believe you can find it on their website. But it's a good idea to know how many times that animal has changed hands. Because each one is a disease opportunity. Each one is definitely a stress situation. So I had a doe once who was a total nutcase. She was born of one farm at another farm, sold to another farm. When I wanted to find out after I bought it from the third home, I had to go back to the original breeder, who actually never owned that doe but did own her mother, and find out what was normal for that line. It was really important to me that I know where all my animals came from. And I don't resell animals willy-nilly, and I don't want people to. I just spent a fair amount of time in this last week helping a family that was dealing with a dying kid. Why did that kid die? Because she did. Because her buddy died. They were two weak babies. They were sold with the understanding that they were weak babies. They went to a wonderful home who did a great job with them. They both started to turn around. And then the second one took a nosedive. We don't know why. But she died. And the first one's heart was broken. Literally broken so badly that it killed her. There was no other reason except that her eyes kept watering. They brought her back here so that I could see her, see if there was something else going on, and to get her another companion. And she perked up a little bit when she saw me and she recognized where she was. But she died on the way home. So it breaks my heart. It broke the owner's heart because that little doe's heart got broken. There was nothing anybody could have changed about it. We all tried to pull everybody through. But people really need to realize that when you're selling goats, those goats do make friends among the herd and with you. So when you rehome them, it's a shock. And if you're really close to you, it can break their hearts. So I don't want my animals to ship all over the place. That's one reason I don't show a whole lot. I want the people who buy my animals to actually want to keep them, not just trade them off because they didn't do well under one judge. Okay? So other paperwork you're going to deal with. You don't have to do these things, but I recommend that you do. One is to set up a sales contract so that you and the buyer have an understanding of what they can expect from you and what you expect from them. When people buy from me, they get my mentorship for as long as they want it. But I'm not going to come check them out. I'm not going to call them and see how the kids are doing. They need to call me if they want some help. I don't want to be bothering anybody who doesn't want to be bothered. But I want to know that those people have an understanding they can call me. I also try to be clear to people, and I don't write it in a sales contract. I have in the past, that I do expect them to take good care of the animals. I don't ask that they give me first right of refusal. I know many people who do. Truthfully, once an animal leaves my farm, I don't expect it to come back. And if it's been in a blended farm and a blended herd, I don't want it to come back. But I will help them sell a herd if they need to. In my stud contract, because I do have a stud service contract too, I stipulate that we guarantee that a conception will happen if all the animals are healthy. One stud service fee gets you 1 year's worth of servicing, even if that has to happen 8 times. Even if that's never our fault. Because people just can't get there when they're does and heat. But after 6 months, then we ask that they have a vet checkout to make sure that their doe can conceive. And if my buck hasn't successfully fathered any other kids, then I'd have him checked out. But if he's successfully fathered kids with other does, it's not his fault. So you can come back to Hames and Axel for a year on that first breeding, and I've been known to carry that over for subsequent years. But we put it in a contract so that everybody understands. We also want to say that nobody comes here and expects to leave their does here. We don't have a boarding situation. So to put all that down on paper, ask people to read it and sign it, is important. Because there have been lawsuits over goats. It's ridiculous, but there have been. And people no longer understand basic responsibilities for animals. They think it's always somebody else's fault. So you need to stipulate what you expect in good care. That means give them a book, might be Personal Milkers written by me. Give them a reference book. Write a booklet yourself. Give them an ebook. But you need to tell them what you expect of them in terms of animal care. And if they don't meet that, then you're exempt from whatever happens to that goat. If they do meet that and there's still a problem and it turns out that the animal was sick when you sold it and you didn't know that it was sick, then you may have to pay for that animal. That's the responsibility of breeding. And when I wrote Personal Milkers the first time, it's on its 11th edition now. But when I first wrote it, I wrote out a breeder's ethics code. And I will put it on as at the end of this videotape. It's not meant to be something that you sign and promise. I wrote it so that people would understand what they could expect and should expect from their breeder. If your breeder does not meet up with all of the code, ask them why. They may have a very good reason. People say, I don't want to buy from Pat Stewart because she doesn't test for yonis. Ask me why, I'll tell you why. If my reasoning doesn't make sense to you, then I don't mind you don't buy from me. but give the breeder a chance to explain themselves for their decisions. Because if you ask any breeder, any person with a goat, you're going to get a different explanation of what is right and what is wrong than from anybody else. I have yet to hear 2 established breeders agree 100% on everything. And that's fine. That's why you take the time to talk to as many breeders as you can. Learn from everybody. And then figure out what works for you. Because you know your piece of land. You know your financial situations. You know what you have for your herd goals. And they are unique to you. And they are unique to you. So you need to take that time and figure out what that is for you. Write your own ethics code, what you think works, and live by that. And at the end of all of the paperwork things, the last piece of paperwork you need to figure out that it's just for you is your next year's kidding. Your next year's kidding chart. So take a look at the babies that have been born. I actually think every generation should be better or as good, but hopefully better than the generation before. Take a look at what's been born. Make note of what you like. Make note of what you need to fix. Really be a harsh critic of the stock that you have. And it's hard because we all get barn blind. We love our goats. But if one's a little dippy in the chine, then find a buck who's not. She's not got any less valuable milk. Her love isn't any less valuable, but her kids can be more valuable. So assess what you have, take into account what your goals are, and figure out your next year's kidding, and let your kidding chart, and let people go from there when they make their reservations. And best of luck to you. I hope this has been helpful. This is Pat Stewart from Up on the Attic. Bye.